Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Super Tease video. And with this one, we're going to be doing a deep dive into the Fury Warrior for Dragonflight and taking a first look at all of the new and cool abilities and talents that you're going to have access to for the next expansion, so that at the end of the video, you're going to have a pretty good idea if this is the specialization for you to main moving forward into the next expansion. And if you like this type of content, deep dives, news updates, so you're always knowing what's the best experience for you in World of Warcraft, then please hit the subscribe button, as it's just going to let you know when my content goes live, and it's going to help me along my long-term goal and dream of getting to 100,000 subscribers, so it would be greatly appreciated. Now, with the Fury Warrior moving forward into Dragonflight, you're going to see a lot of new interesting combinations of talents that you had previously not been able to gain access to. I would say that Warrior is one of the most benefiting classes with this overhaul of talents moving forward, just in general. Especially if you haven't seen my arms video, you need to check it out. We're seeing some returning abilities as well to Fury that I really loved on the specialization in previous expansions. But let's just get started. The first row is going to be the returning of stances. Battle stance is now going to provide you 3% increased critical strike chance, as well as reduce the effectiveness of movement and parrying effects by 15% for more mobility. Defensive stance remaining the same here, 20% damage reduction, as well as 10% less damage output. And the return of Berserker stance, which is going to provide you an increase to your auto attack damage by 5%, as well as reduce the effectiveness of Fear, Sap, and Incapacitate by 15%. The auto attack damage is nice, but at the same time, you already have great ways with dealing with Fear, Sap, and Incapacitate, so that secondary effect is very minor, if completely unimpactful. It's going to just come down to whether or not Battle Stance does more damage than Berserker Stance, I think, in the long term between these two. Then we've got Fast Footwork, just 5% movement speed. Rallying Cry, which we're going to have to talent into. We have the option for Intervene versus Second Wind, so some personal resource for leveling, which is going to be great, versus Intervene, which is really good at high-level PvP. I'm uncertain as to whether or not you would find it too useful in PvE if intervening a certain attack at a specific time on a tank is necessary, or maybe intervene just for mobility to escape. But mobility is certainly not going to be a problem for Warrior as we move through the remainder of these talents. Berserker Rage, still 1 minute cooldown, removal of incapacitates. Siphoning Strikes if you want to try and run a leech build and get some more self-healing. And now this is where we get into the cheeky stuff. Double Time, getting access to a second charge, as well as reducing its cooldown by 3 seconds. We can empower our Rallying Cry, but honestly, that's kind of boring compared to some of the other talents on this row. Spell Reflect, just the classic, just ability to reflect spells. And then Berserker Shout, an all new ability to Warriors here. 1 minute cooldown, allowing you to remove Fear and Sap and Incapacitate effects to allies around you. So it's kind of like a 1 minute cooldown Tremor Totem Shout that you didn't have before, which is great utility in the game. There's always fears that need to be removed, even saps as well. I'm thinking against like Rogue Mage, being able to Berserker Shout a sap chain off a blind sap on your healer is going to be really good. Heroic Leap, 45-second cooldown, but as we get deeper, you'll see how crazy it gets. There's cooldowns focused on around incentivizing your usage of pummel that you're going to notice and your interrupts. This one reducing its cooldown, but also reducing the cooldown of your Bloodthirst as well. We can talent into Stormbolt for getting extra single target crowd control, 4-second stun, or Titanic Throw, which is going to be kind of like an AoE heroic throw to try and get some ranged aggro. Not sure how much you would really want that as Fury specifically. Intimidating Shout, just the classic Fear, 1.5 minute cooldown. And then we can spec into Impending Victory or Piercing Howl. So you're already going to notice you can get double time, Stormbolt, and Impending Victory, which is a huge amount of mobility, lockdown, and self-sustain that you'd previously had unavailable to you. Bit unfortunate to lose Piercing Howl, because I feel like Piercing Howl is like situationally really cool, but the overall value of Impending Victory is so high that I think it's unlikely that Piercing Howl is ever taken in situations where you need to be able to heal. Maybe PvE encounters where snares are more valuable, you may opt for this, but in PvP, I'm feeling like Impending Victory is likely going to be victorious over Piercing Howl. Furious Blows, damage of Bloodthirst, Slam, Shield Slam, and Whirlwind increased by 10%. You can't really go wrong with flat damage buffs. Massacre, allowing you to use Execute above 35%. And then we can get Rend as Fury. I'm uncertain as to like some of these talents that were previously available to the other specs coming into a spec that is now, it didn't have it before, is going to work. Mostly from tuning, synergies with the rest of the class. So kind of wait and see. But Pain and Gain is really powerful. 10-second cooldown, heal for 5% of your health whenever you take damage. That's a ton of healing, probably the most passive amount of healing I've seen in the game. So you might be reaching immortality levels. Thunderclap available to Fury. Again, much like Rend, I'm not sure how well this is going to really fit into the class, considering there's not a lot of other synergies working along with it in the base class. Cacophonous Roar. Gets me coughing up a lung here trying to say it. Intimidating Shout can withstand 200% more damage as the conduit carrying forward. War Machine, our first row talent for more auto attack. Generating Rage, which could have really good synergies with kind of Berserker Stance and a bunch of other auto attacking talents on the tier. Shattering Throw, which is going to deal up to 500% increased damage to absorb shields. I'm assuming it still allows you to crack divine shields and blessing protections. Kind of have to wait and see, but if you don't need that, you can get bounding stride, so you can have reduced cooldown heroic leap, double time, just going all over the map like crazy, insane mobility, insane lockdown. Seismic Reverberation, if Whirlwind hits 3 or more enemies, it's going to hit them for an additional time, just really good for cleave damage. Armored to the Teeth, really powerful kind of passive effect for Warrior. You're going to gain strength equal to your armor value. Blood and Thunder, which is increasing damage to Thunderclap, and it's going to allow you to kind of spread your Rend to multiple targets. So maybe there's some sort of AoE Thunderclapping Rend bleed build, but I feel like juggling all of your rage and getting your rampages and AoEing your rampages is already really rage intensive, that incorporating that would either completely supersede the core of Fury Warrior, like you replace basically everything you're doing with your class to do that, or it's not going to exist. Crushing Force, damage of Shield Slam and Slam increased by 25%. Overwhelming Rage, your maximum rage is increased by 30%. And then Die by the Sword, which wasn't available to you as Fury before, so you're going to be able to get Enraged Regen and Die by the Sword, have this kind of insane damage reduction cooldown against melee attackers, as well as the self-sustainability and healing that you previously had. So really high value here. You're going to be able to spec between one-handed or two-handed dual wielding. I'm kind of always on the fence of like whichever one ends up doing the most damage is the one that I just wear all of the time. And it would be really frustrating if in some scenarios wearing one-handers was better than two-handers, because it just means you need to get 4 weapons and you're going to need like twice the amount of loadouts because your weapon type is also built into your talents. So while it's like cool cosmetically, I'd almost rather it just be like a cosmetic thing. I can transmog two-handers to one-handers if I want the visual effects of being like a fast attacker without losing the value of it, over incorporating it into the talents. That's just my own opinion though. Dauntless Duelist is the Venthyr Covenant coming forward into the Warrior talents, where you're going to do extra damage to your first enemy. They'll do less to you, not really too valuable. And then Frothing Berserker, your abilities that cost rage have a 20% chance to immediately refund 20% of the rage spent. We get into Cruel Strikes, 4% increased critical strike chance, and Reinforced Plates increases your armor by 60% of your strength. Again, really big synergies between Armor to the Teeth and Reinforced Plates. Endurance Training, giving you 5% more stamina. Really insane combinations with Pain and Gain. Quick Thinking, it's going to give you haste on this side of the tree. And then we got Two-Handed Weapon Specialization on the left, is just increasing your damage using a single two-handed weapon by 5. So this is going to be focused around your two-handed weapon usage. Spear of Bastion is going to be returning the Kyrian Covenant ability. Avatar, so you're going to be able to spec into Avatar, not just have to rely on proccing it. So you're getting a lot from Arms Warriors, honestly, as a Fury Warrior. Previously unavailable, you could only really get this through proccing it through a Legendary. Bitter Immunity, 3-minute cooldown. You're going to restore 20% of your health instantly, remove poisons, disease, curses, and bleed effects from you, which can be really powerful if Assassination Rogues, Feral Dudes are powerful in PvP, or if there's a lot of bleed mechanics that you need to deal with. But usually, if that's the case, in the most competitive modes of the game, you're going to make a dwarf character to deal with that mechanic. Shockwave, which was previously unavailable, so you can have access to an AoE stun for AoE disruption, really valuable, especially if you're blasting up massive sustained AoE damage. Thunderous Roar, which is just going to be a roar in a cone, does physical damage, applies a bleed. Dual wield specialization, this is increasing your damage while dual wielding by 5%. Again, the language on this is a little bit strange. This allows you to dual wield, but then you've got things up here that are focused around your we'll have to wait and see how this all plays out for leveling, but in terms of endgame, I'm not sure. It seems like those two talents, the language on them needs to change. Elysian Might, we can empower our Spear of Bastion to last longer, giving us 25% crit damage, or Piercing Verdict, we can buff the instant damage and rage generation during the Spear of Bastion's time. We can get the Signet of Tormented Kings, activating Bladestorm, Recklessness, or Avatar, which now you'll have Recklessness I think you'll be able to get Blade Storm from the baseline talents or from the Fury talents. So I have to wait and see. Maybe you actually don't get Blade Storm. I'm trying to see it off to the right of my monitor, but when we get to it, we'll see specifically. But honestly, if you lose Blade Storm, it's a pretty big deal. I feel like you don't, but we'll have to wait. You can now you'll have Avatar and Recklessness to be able to have a chance to proc between these, which makes its value even higher. Unstoppable Force, Avatar is going to increase the damage of Thunderclap by 50%. So again, that Ren spamming build, like, seems like it's trying to be forced into here, and it will only be forced if it's balanced to be better than the baseline class, and then your class is just Thunderclap spamming, which is really weird to me, but we'll have to wait and see how it works out. Rumbling Earth, when Shockwave strikes at least 3 targets, its cooldown is reduced by 15 seconds. Again, in PvP, a 2-second stun, not really that valuable. In PvE, though, getting an extra little AoE disruption can't really go wrong. Thunderous Aftershocks, Thunderous Roar is also going to knock down enemies and cause shockwaves afterwards, and each shockwave is going to generate additional rage per target hit. So really heavy focus around AoE and bleed damage towards the left, as well as crowd control. And we'll have to wait and see which ones end up kind of being the best. I just want to give you the overview of all of it, get your brain going on, do these talents sound really cool? There's some fun combinations that you can go after rather than just completely taking that away from you and giving you like what I would lock in as the best, because we don't really know what the best is gonna be just yet. Bloodthirst, obviously. Raging Blow, core to the Fury Warrior class. Improved Execute. Execute no longer costs rage, now generates rage. Enraged regeneration. Improved Enrage. Enrage increases your haste by 15%, increasing your movement speed by 10%. There's nothing really new on the top tier row of talents. These are kind of already just baseline abilities. You can focus towards Single-Minded Fury or Titan's Grip, depending on which side of the tree you want to go down. And this is, again, the problems I feel like with building your weapon type into your talent tree. Because if two-handed weapons are just best, they do more damage than one-handed weapons, then the left side of the tree is basically dead weight. Or if the left side of the tree, where single-handed weapons are just better in all situations, then the right side of the tree is going to mostly feel dead. Or you have to get 4 weapons, and you have to enchant 4 weapons and have that set up to be able to switch depending on the situation. If, for let's say, one-handed weapons do more damage in single target and two-handed weapons do more damage in AoE for whatever reason, I think that could be a really big problem. Improved Bloodthirst, just increasing the damage of your Bloodthirst. And we'll go down the left because it's more focused on one-handed weapons. Your auto attacks have no penalty to hit from dual wielding during Enraged. Single-Minded Fury, while dual wielding a pair of one-handed weapons, your damage done is increased by 12%, and you get 5% more movement speed. Frenzied Flurry increases your auto attack damage with one-handed weapons by 10%, and your auto attack critical strikes have a 50% chance to enrage you. Blood Craze, Bloodthirst increases the critical strike chance of your next Bloodthirst by 10%, stacking up to 5 times. Vicious Contempt, Bloodthirst deals 40% increased damage to enemies who are below 35% health. And Fresh Meat, Bloodthirst always enrages you the first time you strike a target and has 15% increased chance to trigger Enraged. Cold Steel and Hot Blood, Bloodthirst critical strikes generate additional rage and inflict a gushing wound that will leech health from the target over 6 seconds. Critical Thinking, which is just flat crit stat, moving down into the cadence of Fujida. Bloodthirst increases your haste by 1% for 12 seconds. I get it 5 times. Not really a big fan of this one. Sidearm, which I think is a new talent. Your auto attacks have a 15% chance to hurl a weapon at your target and 3 other enemies in front of you. So you're just like randomly throwing stuff out of your pockets at people. I don't know how good that's going to be. I mean, it's just passive AoE damage, I guess, sort of. It could do a lot or be entirely useless. Annihilator, your auto attacks with one-handed weapons deal an additional 500 physical damage. So you can see it's all focused towards that. And then finally, Odyn's Fury. So happy to see this come back. 45-second cooldown. Unleash your power, dealing 3,000 physical damage and an additional 1,400 damage over 4 seconds to all enemies within 12 yards. Odyn's Fury was kind of like the pop-off button that Fury Warrior was missing from Legion. I am so glad to see it come back. Bloodborne, bleed damage of Odyn's Fury, Thunderous Roar, and Gushing Wound increased by 15%. Curious if they would want to include Rend on this, because then you could have maybe some options for Rend. But again, you're always so starved for trying to get Rage to spend on Rampage that I don't know how Rend or Thunderclap are going to really work in with this build as Fury. Warpaint, just damage reduction while you're enraged. Sudden Death, just sudden procs of Execute. Invigorating Fury, enraged regeneration lasts longer. It instantly will heal you. Concussive Blows, again, focusing on your pummel. If you land an interrupt, you'll get 5% more damage. This is a 30-second cooldown, and it also reduces the cooldown of your pummel, so we get 3 seconds off our pummel. Improved Raging Blow, getting 2 charges of Raging Blow, 20% chance to instantly reset its cooldown. Nothing new here. Rampage towards the center. You're gonna always have to go down the center side. Again, like I said, it's between single single and two-handed, and you'll have a little bit of a mix when you're going two-handed with some single targets, single one-handed weapon talents that are just really good for two-handed as well. But a lot of these other ones could potentially go completely unused the whole expansion unless you're just RPing. Frenzy, just stacks of haste when you're rampaging, and this is where kind of like your priority on your rage spent kind of comes in. So I don't know how you're going to mix these other abilities. Improved rampage causes you to become enraged and rampage damage increased. And then recklessness, which is the one that you really got to make sure that you're going after towards the middle here. I don't think you could play a Fury Warrior without going after this, although I guess you could try. Swift strikes, just 4% haste, or Valor of Victory for 4% verse if you want to focus on damage reduction and damage output. Now in the center, we've got a choice between anger management, which is cooldown reduction on our recklessness. Unfortunately, it's not cooldown reduction on anything else. Reckless abandon, which is recklessness now will generate rage and greatly empower your bloodthirst and raging blow. I'm feeling the reckless abandon. It's really fun to have the crushing blow improvement from raging blow. And then we've got some conduits from Shadowlands carrying forward, which is increasing the duration of your recklessness, or hack and slash, which is rampage is a 30% chance to refund a charge of raging blow towards the center. Honestly, the bottom center ones are really lackluster for me. And now moving down the left side of the tree, we can spec into improved whirlwind, which is next to single target attacks are also going to be a cleave after whirlwinding. Cruelty, while enraged, raging blow deals 20% more damage with a 30% chance to reset its cooldown. You can see there's tons of options to already reset your raging blow that I think is going to be unnecessary. And then Titan's Grip, just giving you access to wearing two-handed weapons as it was previously. Onslaught, which has never been my favorite ability to press, which is just an extra attack that generates rage. Meat Cleaver, Whirlwind is going to do more damage and now affects your next 3 single target attacks, but you can spend 2 points into this. So let's see what that gets up to, because okay, so it's still 30%. So it's 30% with 2 and nothing. It's not going to increase the like 6 single target abilities is what I wanted to see. Wrath and Fury, damage of raging blow increased. Pulverized Onslaught generates 10 more rage and enrages you for 8 seconds. Again, trying to make an ability that was like previously kind of boring more interesting, which I like, but I don't know if it's enough for me to really want to take Onslaught. Deft Experience, which is going to grant you 4% mastery when you put 2 points into it. And then Siegebreaker, which honestly I really like the legendary in Shadowlands that procs your Siegebreaker on a target, but to take a talent and a global out of your way to activate it, and it's like it's only 15% damage, I'm just not a fan of this iteration of Siegebreaker. I would have rather seen the legendary that passively procs it over this version of Siegebreaker. Deafening Crash increases the damage by Siegebreaker by 30% and its duration by 3 seconds, again trying to enhance it. But it's its baseline damage, not its damage percent increase. So and then Ravager, likely for AoE situations, probably never going to be used in PvP. Just you're going to throw an axe on the ground, it's going to start spinning like crazy, and we can increase the Ravager's duration to get some big whirlwind. So the biggest win here, I think, is Odyn's Fury. Moving forward for Fury Warrior, getting access to defensives and offensive abilities that you didn't have available as Fury that were only for Arms Warrior or Prot Warrior, and then now having tons of mobility, interesting utility for your partners, likely going to be in a really powerful position here moving forward into Dragonflight. Very excited to see how it all pans out, but that's pretty much it for me here. My thoughts on the class. I hope that you learned something from this video, got something from it, maybe piqued your interest in checking it out, or maybe it's given you a warning to maybe steer towards something else if this doesn't sound appealing to you. Other than that, thank you very much for watching the video, and I will catch you in the next one.